All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we have the minutes of our October 12th meeting.
I would move approval of the minutes of October 12th.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to bills for payment. We have warrant 9 and 9P.
I'll move that we approve warrant 9 and 9P.
All right,
I'll second that.
good. Discussion? Okay.
Yeah, it looked good to me.
All right. The total for warrant 9 is $145,405.53. There's 15,500 and some change going to A.S. Clark to complete the Tucker Reed Bridge project. We have payroll transfers, rescue monthly contract of $3,515, some gravel, parts for the highway department and fuel, just under $2,000 for painting yellow lines, contributions to Blue Cross Blue Shield, election supplies, the electronic software for the next election, the Sheriff's Department at $980, and the bulk of this warrant is $113,300. It's a refund on a tax sale where the property was redeemed, and so the money that had been held in escrow is being returned to the individual who bid on that property. So, any discussion more? Then all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Recognition of visitors, public comments. Harold, do you have anything to say? Okay. We have the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation
And
is going to be speaking to us.
yes, and I invited them for shortly after 6.
This is fairly shortly after 6.
I'm sure they will be here.
Okay, we have Sam Farwell from the Planning Commission. This is going to be a very quick meeting, I guess. So let's go on to the Road Foreman's report and go back. Lee's not here, but in our file of the Road Foreman's report, there's a curb cut for, let's see, the Meinke, Brickley curb cut. This is across from 55 Park Laughton Rd. Lee has visited with them. They have paid the fee. What would you like to do?
Can I just see it real quick?
Yep.
Lee had talked to me about something on it, and I want to make sure that it got...
I did a question, and I talked to Lee about that last week in depth, but for the first culverts, does the landowner pay for the first culverts, or is it the town? Or is it a shared cost? That's what I don't recall. Do you know, Steve?
I think generally the landowner puts the first one in, and then the town maintains them.
Okay. That's okay. That's what I thought. I couldn't.
I think that's generally what the procedure's been.
Okay.
Because we really, well, number one, the town shouldn't be competing with contractors that do the work.
Yep.
But number two, we shouldn't be probably doing private
Right.
driveways.
Yeah, I just know if
But
it's a
once
shared
they're in,
cost.
we maintain the ditches, and
Yep.
and if a culvert were to fail, we then replace it.
So on this one, if a culvert, there's two culverts, so would the town have any liability for the culvert that's 75 feet, or I can't remember the exact distance up the driveway,
160 feet.
150 feet? Would we have any
160.
liability for that culvert, or just the one that is closest to the road?
Oh, no, just the one closest to the road. No, once you get off the right of way, no.
Then we're good, okay.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'll move we approve it.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We had a letter from the Rock River Preservation Organization regarding the north edge of Depot Road. And they had they're looking to get the state to possibly widen the edge there for pedestrians. I know that Lee went up and took a look, and he thought that it would be the state and possibly Newfane that would be involved, that it wouldn't involve Dummerston. So I don't think we need any action on that right at the moment.
Okay. I was impressed with the tone of the letter.
Yeah. Anything else under the road foreman section that you want to discuss?
Oh, that's not an agenda.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yep. Thank you, Steve.
So we'll go back to earlier portion of our agenda, and we have some representatives from the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation here who would like to give us an update on what they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
First off, I'd like to apologize. We were at the office.
Oh,
You guys are shifty coming on, so we
okay, yeah,
made it over here.
you were sitting out in the cold?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So sorry about that.
Sure. My name's Alex Beck, for those of you who may not remember me. And I'm the Workforce and Education Program Manager with the B.D.C.C. And I just thought I'd give you a quick update on the progress of our different programs.
do you want to come a little closer?
Sure, of course. We'll go chronological in terms of our greatest stakeholders. So the Fast Tracks to Success program is our newest program, and it is for high school students. It is a career awareness program, and it works with mostly high school students, bringing them to local employers from all of the different sectors that we have, where jobs really do exist here in Windham County. So students can see what those jobs look like now at an early age and can plan their educational careers so they're best suited to enter those jobs. One group we worked with that wasn't high school students, we actually worked with Bellows Falls 8th grade girls and helped get them to a Women in Engineering Summit, which was in Claremont, New Hampshire. So it was the first time anyone from Vermont was invited, and through the grapevine, this opportunity landed on my plate. So we actually, the B.D.C.C. sponsored a workshop which featured the Stone Trust. So two members of the Stone Trust came with small rocks and also big styrofoam blocks, and the young women were able to learn about building arches and building stone walls, because dry masonry is an incredibly unique thing that we have here in our county, and of course in Dummerston. And so being able to celebrate that in New Hampshire with students from Bellows Falls was a really great opportunity. Other than that, we've taken Windham Regional Career Center students to Commonwealth Dairy. Just today, we were at GS Precision and WW Building with students from Twin Valley and BUHS. Those trips will come in the coming weeks. There is our internship program, which is for collegiate students, whether they are in college here in Windham County or they're coming back for summers or winter breaks. That's available to any collegiate student. And that is chugging away. We have another year of Department of Labor support for that. So it exists and it continues to do quite well. We have our Young Professionals group. Our upcoming events we're doing a wine tasting at Windham Wines, which should be really fun. but we're also doing a Health Connect Navigator workshop. So those who may not receive health care from their employers have an opportunity to learn how to get health care and be insured in the variety of ways in the changing landscape that we have here in Vermont with regards to health care, making sure everyone can access that health care. So those are the two different kinds of events we do, and those are the two most coming up. And then lastly, we have our roundtable meetings, which is also relatively new, and we invite any employers from different industry sectors to attend these meetings and really say, what are your pain points for growth? And if you're in manufacturing or healthcare, small business owner, technology, services, construction, we don't care. There is a roundtable for you, and so you can come and say, this is what we're missing. It's and we work through that. We often bring speakers either from the state or for other that are in touch with other resources to come and present to that as well. So the upcoming one for manufacturers is going over the new legislation that talks about toxic substances in children's toys. So for manufacturers who are making things that end up, that children may be exposed to, there are new, more stringent laws about the toxicity of those. And we want to ensure that our employers and manufacturers can comply with that in the best way possible. So that's just a sample of what we'll be doing. And I believe that meeting is December 1st. We have a technology one and a healthcare, as well as a green building products and services. So, that is what I have for the workforce development component. Are there any questions on that? Because I will also be sharing a little bit about the Ecovation Hub. We had a recent milestone for that as well. So periodically, the Ecovation Hub or the Green Economy Innovation Hub or the Green Building Cluster, any and all, right now it's the Ecovation Hub. And the most recent milestone, these ideas that these different groups, action teams have been working on for many, many months were presented. It was a very well attended event. And now, moving forward, we're looking how to put those action plans into action and to really seize the opportunities that have been developed through that.
Yeah, and Alex, I've seen the video that was made of the Ecovation Hub, and I was very impressed by that. I don't know if it's something that you're interested in having it on other websites, but and I don't know if it would be relevant on the Dummerston Town website or a link to it, but
Sure.
It was pretty impressive.
Thank you. And I think what I would love for the B.D.C.C to be able to take all of the credit for that, but if you look at it, they're interviews with the people from the Ecovation Hub. And so it was shot by local marketing organizations and edited by them. So it was just another product of the Ecovation Hub, not just a great marketing thing. So thank you for that. And if you'd like, I'd be happy to send you the link, and we can find ways to...
I don't see why it couldn't be public. I mean,
Yeah, no.
It's playing at the latches for a month straight. I think.
Yeah, so
Well, no, but I mean, I wondered if the Dummerston.org site would want it.
Oh, I got you.
Yep.
I'd need to ask. Yeah.
and so those are really the two updates I have. If there's any questions, I can hand it off to RT.
I guess I have to stand up. RT Brown, the project manager for the Windham County Economic Development Program. That's the Vermont Yankee program that helps distribute the funds that they've provided, entities provided to the state, in the form of either loans or grants. I think if anyone has specific questions about that program, I'd be happy to dive into that. I wanted to touch on just a couple of activities, specifically something that's come out of our EDA-funded Business Accelerator Feasibility Study. It was also funded partly by the Windham County program. That wrapped up in May, and one of the gaps that was identified out of that study was that there's not a lot of activity or not enough activity in the region around early firm or early business creation. Things that bring people together to help them bounce ideas off each other and try to really strategically and in a sustainable way keep the momentum forward so that people can take what may be just the kernel of an idea to the formation of a business. So we've launched a program called Instigate, and we're taking across the county these idea jams that sort of help facilitate those conversations. And then, if something bubbles up out of those events, we're able to provide them with the resources or direct them to the right resources like the Vermont SBDC, or maybe something that we would be offering to help them take their idea and make it actually turn into something. At the same time, we're researching and developing a way for businesses who are existing already, that maybe are ready to scale but don't really know how to scale. What's a good avenue for them to get the services that they might need to work through those sorts of issues. So that's Instigate. What else did I want to touch on? Alex touched on the Excavation Hub. We have recently hired a new position that came out of an RCDI grant. That is also a regional position, and but also it includes Bennington. It's called you might have seen some press on it, the Economic Development Zone, where we will be convening all economic development bodies or agencies within the region to really try to identify what assets each area has, so that we're not duplicating work, and really try to bring them together so that everyone has a common language, and we can really be more efficient in the work that we do in the field of economic development. So that's what I have. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No, sounds-
Especially with this zone project, the person we've hired has done a really fantastic job trying to create the web. It's very much a networked approach to finding out what everyone's doing. So whether you're a self-identified economic development person or a community development person, or you're just doing something in the community that's grounding, a project that you want to be grounded in your community, you can reach out to her as well. And so it'll be important for her to know, oh, this is happening here. So she'll pick up the phone and call you when there's someone in Bennington who you should really talk to, or would really like to learn from what you're doing well. So a good example is talking with Food Connects and looking at the farm-to-table network model that's worked quite well, and how it's not hierarchical. It's this intricate web of relationships and interesting projects and people who are all kind of rowing in the same direction. So it's a really fascinating project. So that's another thing that you can, if you want to put yourself or a project that you're doing on that radar, absolutely reach out.
Yeah, I appreciate your enthusiasm, and it also makes me as a select board member feel like Brattleboro is connecting with surrounding towns, that we're really all in this together. So I very much appreciate that.
I've enjoyed that about the idea jam. We just did one in Bells Falls last week. We'll do one in Londonderry next week, and it's a nice outreach opportunity for me specifically, and it's really great to connect with those communities and those folks.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Well, Sam Farwell is going to give us, of the planning commission, is going to give us an update on the new town plan draft.
Whoa, looks like you've got copies for us.
I do. I'm sorry I didn't get them to you before the meeting.
It's all right.
But this is for your...
But they were available
I read it
online.
online.
Hey,
How do you like
tell that
that?
to the voters.
Yeah, I just did.
I should leave this one here. I don't know, you probably don't want me to spend too much time
I was
tonight.
thinking you could just read it.
I would happily do that. But maybe,
Steve, did you want to move right next to Zeke?
yeah. I do want to make a
We're having
pitch.
a hearing on this, or an open meeting on this shortly, right? So
That's why I want to get on camera, so that everybody knows that we are having this public forum on this town plan update draft next Tuesday at 7 at our town hall, the
Dummerston Congregational Church basement. And that is where we really are looking forward to hearing from Dummerston residents what they think of our town plan. We've made some changes. A lot of what we've been working on is updating, just going through each chapter and finding the things that are no longer accurate or relevant, and trying to just tighten up each chapter so that they are up to date and relevant. A lot of data in here, particularly in the community profile, which has a lot of population data, the housing chapter, which we haven't gotten into this draft yet because it has so much data to update. So that's a lot of what our work has been, is seeing that, oh, this is from the 2000 census. What does the 2010 census say? Or maybe the 2015 American Community Survey. So there are, however, some changes, and we'd like to get feedback on those. I'm not, like I said, you probably don't want me to lead you through exactly all the edits.
I saw that you were editing quite a lot, tightening it, making it more concise. I didn't see any big changes, really. I didn't see any explosive issues that were going to ignite the community.
And I have to be careful. I can't lead you, and I have to speak as a representative of the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So, but speaking as a technocrat, maybe not. I don't think that there's anything, for example, in the land use chapter that's going to immediately lead to a change in zoning that we did. So you can breathe easy, probably. There may be some changes that certain people think are, some deletions that certain people might think are important to keep in as relevant. So I'm hoping that people, like I said, I can't lead people to exactly those things because I think it's, I don't want to come down on one side or the other of whether it's a good idea or not, or be accused of fanning any flames. But there isn't too much. We haven't reworked it like the last update was.
Right.
We did, and I think I was here last spring telling you about the update and saying that we, from the outset, kind of thought that it would be best to leave the maps as they are. I mean, they will get updated as far as any changes to the road classifications, et cetera, but as far as the land use districts, we wouldn't be touching that because that was what we worked on in 2014. So we're trying to stick to the text.
So Sam, can you say something about the timeline for our Dummerston town plan in terms of the requirements of updating?
Mm-hmm. So, well, one of the requirements is that the Planning Commission make every effort for public outreach and get citizen involvement. So I'm hopeful that we will have one or two more public forums before we get to the point where we think we're nearing the end. But the way the process finishes up will be the Planning Commission has a public hearing, and there are required amounts of time to be allowed. Once it's warned, and I can't remember the number of days, before from warning to holding it, and then if that public hearing leads to an immediate action by the Planning Commission to send it to the Select Board, you go through the same process with the same number of days required. So there's about a 3 or 4 month process of just holding these public hearings. I'm hopeful that we might get to that point at the end of next summer. Which
and what about the sort of requirement of updating a town plan every 5 years, or there was something about every 8, something being changed to 8 years?
Correct. It just got changed. It was every 5 years, and just in the
got changed by
the legislature
the Vermont legislature.
Yeah, in the last legislative session. So this one will, if it's adopted, say in the fall of 2018. We'll have 8 years from then. I'm sorry, 2017. So that's great, because I think a lot of planning commissions were finding that
5 years was too soon.
it was almost, by the time they would make a few changes to their zoning, they were back to updating the town plan again, and it was just an ongoing process.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah. I wanted to just tie into the economic development folks who were here. It was different representatives from the same organizations that came to the planning commission at our last meeting, and we are trying to make more out of our economic development chapter. It's been just a couple paragraphs, and so we were looking to them for some, just to learn more about what they were doing too. And I would love to get town feedback on, what people see as, what the town should be doing, or what their vision is for the future economic development in Dummerston, how we fit into the region. I think there's a great discussion we could have. These chapters are all required by statute. The legislature tends to add a new chapter every so often, and the plan gets thicker and thicker. But economic development is one of those required chapters, and so we can keep it at a page and just meet the statutory requirement, or we can have good discussion and see if there's things that we can strategize for in the future. A new chapter, speaking of new requirements and new chapters, is the flood resilience chapter, which is on page 44 of the draft right now. That's came out of Hurricane Irene, and so now it's required in every town plan. That we got a lot of help from Wyndham Regional. The John Bennett down there has worked with just about every other town in Wyndham, in the Wyndham region, and in developing their flood resilience chapter. So he pretty much had a template. But there again, it'd be great to get feedback because we don't have to follow the template. We have to meet certain requirements, but and it does. We don't end that chapter with very much as far as action steps. The main action step will be that we will have to update our flood regs in our bylaw, but not necessarily
In our bylaw?
in our zoning bylaw.
In the zoning bylaw.
Yeah. But not necessarily make any drastic changes. So,
So again, the first forum you're going to have is,
November 1st,
okay,
next Tuesday, not election night, 7 o'clock in the basement of the Dummerston Congregational Church.
okay, and people, if they want to read this online, it is,
Absolutely. There's an announcement for that event on the front page of the town website with a link to take you to the draft on the website, which you can either download or just read right there. And at the town office, they'll be happy to print off more of these copies at your request, and even leave it out on the porch if you can't get there by 3.
okay.
So.
Sam, just on this, I know you said there wasn't much that's going to change with the zoning, but is anything like with the DRB, since the waivers came into the process, that seemed to have alleviated a lot of, I don't know, problems, but alleviated a lot of things with zoning hearings. But through any of the hearings that have happened over the last year or so, has anything come up that you've addressed, or that's lurking on the horizon?
Well, there are things lurking on the horizon. We have been putting off working on the zoning bylaw as we have gotten deeper and deeper into the town plan.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's things we could write into the town plan, that would be helpful, because ideally, everything in the town plan is in accordance with everything in the zoning bylaw. So I don't have something off the top of my head for that, but we do have. You've already had meetings where the Airbnb issue has come up, so we're going to need to address that in our zoning bylaw. We still have home business to address in our zoning bylaw. We still have not updated that. So we have things to get back to in zoning for sure.
Right.
And if, I could say more about Airbnb if you want me to right now.
I just want to make sure, I just remember occasionally, we would have some feedback from, problems. I knew that waiver thing really helped out, the development review board a lot on some of the hearings that they had to hold. So I just wondered if anything had come up that in the last year or so.
Yeah, we haven't, other than the Airbnb and a particular wording in the actually in the home business. That's the only feedback we've gotten from the DRB.
Okay.
A problematic word.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're communicating, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
So,
thanks.
Any other?
And there are copies of these at the town office.
Yes.
For people. to pick
Yes.
up.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks for your work, Dan.
Hope to see you there.
Yep. All right, let's see, we have correspondence for information. The sheriff sent a detail for the September bill.
That's what you had asked me to get. I didn't realize he was gonna send it to you too, but I brought it.
Yep, so that was good.
Yeah, I wanted to know though how to read that. It says for each date, how many,
It says how many hours deputy was in town, usually what roads they patrolled and.
Which deputy?
Yeah,
It's-
which
it-
deputy.
right,
I mean,
and
it tells you
then
right across. but-
how many warnings there were? I mean, it was just,
I
it
think
seemed like a
sometimes they'll
large
put in a
number.
warning, sometimes they'll tell you if they wrote a ticket or if they arrested somebody.
But did you see the numbers there?
Their case numbers?
Oh, those are case numbers. I thought it was the number of those, like 600, it seemed
Yeah.
like more, I thought it was a count.
Okay.
Oh, I don't think they
Yeah.
write 600 tickets. in
No,
the-
no, no, no,
I
I
don't
know.
think so.
That's why I
I
was
think-
wanting to know how to read that.
Yeah,
No, I think that's probably just their reference.
Their
number.
reference of the case number. Fine.
right,
Good, that makes sense.
good.
And then also, well, I might as well follow up. You'd asked me to look into the phone call that Paul Normando made. Had a good discussion with Mark. I haven't talked to Paul since I got the information, but I mean, obviously they had a different take on the conversation than Paul did. But they're gonna visit with the particular person he talked to and make sure that they understand what Dummerston's commitment was and what their commitment is to the town for speeding. And the real issue apparently that day was that there just wasn't anybody available. They were either too far away or there wasn't somebody to immediately respond to Paul's request, so they turned him over to the state police. So
I see.
obviously they had a different thought process
Yeah.
than Paul. So hopefully by the discussion with the person on the switchboard that day, it won't be an issue again anyway. But they did reiterate, if there's not somebody available, there's just not somebody available. So they turn them over to the state police. So, and I will contact Paul directly to let him know what the answer was.
Good. Any other questions while we're on the sheriff's department? Good.
Oh, they, one more quick thing they are working on, so when we do our budgets, they're hoping to have the, quite often we get their rate after we do the budget,
Right.
and they are trying to get that established ahead of budget time
Good.
for
Okay.
towns, so.
Do you
And they're
have-
more than happy to come visit with us.
Right.
I told them I didn't think it was gonna be till November or something like November, so. But,
Yeah. Right, maybe before we get really into the budget.
yeah, they're more than happy to come.
Yeah.
They've been excellent. I mean, they've just been excellent. Anything I've ever contacted them or followed, they've tried to follow up, so. They're looking forward to come visiting with us whenever we
Yeah,
want to.
great. So once we get into November, let's maybe
Yep.
try to pick a date. Let's see, we have, there was also under correspondence for information, a VLCT municipal action paper on taxation and budgets. That's good bedside reading. There was a tear sheet on the public hearing on Wickopee Hill speed limit change. thank you from the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont for the town's contribution. There was Act 250 application from the Scott Farm, and if you want to discuss that, I can step down. Okay. Under correspondence for discussion and/or action, we have received a letter from the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District on 2 different budget proposals that they're going to be voting on November 10th. And one of them calls for pretty much continuing business as usual. And another one calls for shutting down the recycling operation that's run out of their building on Ferry Road. So we have scheduled for our next meeting Michelle Charrier, who's our representative, and the chair of the governing board of the Solid Waste District, who's going to come and try to fill us in and where we can ask questions. If they cease operating as a recycling facility there, it will of course mean a lower assessment to the town. So it's just something we should try to read and prepare for, so we can at our next meeting be prepared to make a decision so we can help our representative who will be voting on it the next day.
The next day.
Yeah.
After that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I know, and you're going to go down and meet with them. So a list of questions
Yeah.
would be helpful for you then to take.
If you got any
Yeah.
questions, send them to me.
Okay.
And one question we've talked about is if they discontinue the recycling, they would discontinue all the bins that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Would people still be able to take recycling down to Ferry Road? That's one question.
Mm-hmm.
If you have more, let me know and I'll get them answered.
Right, and then we're just looking at the tonnage, the data for the
Yeah.
tonnage and the trips. And then, I guess just so people are aware, it's, so the options are to keep it as it is, or to do away with the MRF, which would, the residents would then either we would come up with a plan to have recycling available in the town at a cost, or not do that, and then each resident would be responsible for their own recycling. So, those are, that's what we're going to be trying to figure out.
Yes.
over the
Which is
next
gonna
couple
get harder if the waste district isn't recycling, so.
Right. So
Right.
we'll get an answer to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Going down just a little, when I got this letter, I gave Triple T a call just to see, well, if Wyndham Solid Waste doesn't, votes not to continue the recycling out at the town garage, what would it cost to have a private contractor provide that service? So they gave some cost estimates, but in order to make any sense of it, we need to know our historical hauling averages. So that's a question I'm going to look into. And so,
Good.
yeah.
Stay tuned, right?
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions from the public? Okay. Let's see. Under new business, we interviewed some candidates for the Selectboard Assistant position, and I think we'd probably want to go into executive session to discuss that. So maybe we can do that later on. Oh, under animal control. This is something that I put on the agenda. There are a couple of dogs that, as one of the animal control officers, I've let you know, you've gotten copies of the letters that I've sent. Let's see, now that the apple harvest is pretty well over, I can go back to making my rounds around town. There are two dogs that I have ordered that they be kept kenneled, tethered, or under the control of the owner, and that they also have to be licensed. And to the best of my knowledge, they haven't been licensed yet. And state statute requires that all dogs in Vermont be licensed. And where these are, have been cited for being aggressive dogs, if I get a call from the emergency room that someone's been bitten and is seeking medical attention, the first thing they want to know is the rabies status of the dog. And without being licensed, I have no idea. And that causes some consternation, particularly with parents of children who have been bitten. So Vermont statute requires that all dogs be licensed by the end of April. By May 31st, the town clerk is to present the select board with called the Census of Unlicensed Dogs. And the select board is at that time supposed to issue the animal control officers in town permission to seize and destroy any unlicensed dogs. I don't think that's ever been done in Dummerston, but it is by statute an option. Usually people have been pretty willing to get their dogs licensed. In this case, they haven't, and I want to have the board's permission to have this option available to me when I go and talk to these people again.
So is it possible that if you seize the dogs, that they would go to the Humane Society and be reassigned to somebody or readopted?
Usually,
or is that not
the
an
Humane
option?
Society usually won't.
Okay. Get involved in something.
They don't want to take aggressive dogs in,
Okay.
but they usually won't adopt out dogs with a history of aggression.
Well, I'll move that the board give the animal control officer approval or permission to follow on this procedure.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
So is that what you were looking for, a motion?
Yes, yeah. So I hope that this will provide more incentive to these individuals to get their dogs licensed.
I see.
I was just going to suggest, have you, or I guess it would make sense to just, perhaps send them a letter saying that you were given that authority at the meeting tonight, and you hope
Yeah.
they do indeed get the license,
Right.
their dog's license, so they don't have to be seized and destroyed.
Right. I think I have used letters in the past, and I think visiting and speaking with them would be good.
Sure.
That'd be the way I would do it. Okay? So a motion's been made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. Let's see.
See, before we started the meeting, or when we started the meeting and asked for if there was any public input, there weren't many people here.
Right.
Should we ask again if somebody's here other than?
Let's do that since we
Just to
have
make
time
sure.
for the hearing. Part of every public meeting involves asking the public if they have any comments. If you're here for something that's on the agenda further on, then you wait for that item to come up. But if you have something that's not on our agenda that you'd like to bring to our attention, then you're more than welcome to stand up and let us know right now. Okay, all right. We'll
Did you
go
get
on.
the unfinished business, or when you went to the?
Unfinished.
To the
Oh,
next.
yes, skipped over that. So, we have the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District's solar savings estimate. Do you want to?
We got the estimate, but they've also redone the contract, so I just got that yesterday where I guess, streamlined the contract a little bit. So it's, right now they've changed it. I think that they're now looking for municipal input by the end of November. And then they're gonna open it up to, other entities to buy into that. So, I could, if you want for the next one, I can look through that contract and we can see what, did everybody see the estimates that went out on that thing? So apparently there's some changes that have gone on. They've streamlined the contract a little bit. So I'd be happy to look through that and bring the estimates in if it's something you think we want to at least analyze a little bit.
Yeah.
Or
It looks like about $1,000 savings a year.
yes, it came out just right for the 20-year life of it, and I think there was some part of the contract was that if the solar adder I think got changed or something, you could opt out. There were a couple opt-out clauses that got put into the contract as well. But if it went as executed, it would be about $1,000 a year for the life of the contract average. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think it's worth looking into, I can.
Yeah, I think, especially coming into budget season, I think savings $1,000 is
Okay.
worth looking into.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
do that.
Let's have that for our next agenda. You
Yes.
ready to?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, what else do we have there? Oh, the job description for the road foreman. Everyone have time to look at that?
Yeah, I'd move that we accept the job description as it's been changed.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
I had a couple questions. If I can find my questions. One of them was, I think it talked about the endorsements, the CDL endorsements, and I'm curious what
It's
endorsements,
under unfinished business.
if they have a CDL, what endorsements they would need.
On that one, I don't have it in front of me because I want to email it to you guys. I know we changed, it's the medical certificate, I think, is what it was. Is that listed as well?
Okay.
And while we're thinking on that one, the other one I thought was we talked a little bit about informing the select board if there's damage to a vehicle or somebody is injured on the job, and there may want to be a clause in here relative to that that he should report any incident to the select board where there's injury or damage to the town assets. Might be a responsibility that he would have also, or they would have. That was the only two things I had. Yeah, it said a CDL with endorsements and a clean driving record, and I was just curious what endorsements we might be asking for, that's all.
Yeah, we wrote that. I think we're just looking for the CDL
And the medical
medical is what that's, yeah.
Or a CDL, medical card, and a clean driving record, but.
Okay. Do you want to, can
I mean, unless we want them to have a hazmat endorsement or a trailer
No,
endorsement.
I don't think so, as we went through that.
I just
think
it seemed
I think
like-
the intent was to have the medical card
Okay, yeah.
and the clean driving record.
okay?
I think in terms of your other request or question, Steve, that's more a protocol. I'm not sure that's something for the job description. It is a responsibility, but there are probably other protocols like that maybe it would be good if they would be articulated, but I'm not sure the job description is necessarily the place for those.
Yeah,
I don't know.
think that we could ask that or require that under carrying out tasks related to town operations as assigned by the select board. Maybe.
And that might need
just-
an appendix or something. I mean, just something so that it's clear, but it's not necessarily part of the job description.
Okay.
So you want to amend the motion to take out the endorsements and just,
Actually,
Make it a-
further down, we address the physical and the medical DLT card, so it would just take out the endorsement that they're required to have a CDL and a clean driving record.
with the medical card, correct?
The medical card is addressed further down,
Okay,
so we wouldn't need to address it
Okay.
there.
so you can just line that one up then.
Yep.
I think just take out with endorsement.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we have an amendment.
So we'll amend the motion.
Yeah.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion, so as amended, I would move that we approve this job description.
Okay. Good.
We'll second that.
Okay.
Motion to
All
amend
right.
the motion.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. So Lee has a new job description,
Updated job description.
updated job description. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Other business. Okay. Well, gee. I guess it's an early night. We could go home. So we have, by statute, we have a public hearing on changing the speed limit on Wickopee Hill. And by statute, we have to wait until 7 o'clock for some reason. Maybe that's, so the West Coast viewers can, get home from work and watch.
Can we be sure that everybody that just came in, if you would sign in, because I'm going to be putting together the minutes and I don't know everybody, so thank you.
So I'm assuming that most of you are here for the Wickopee Hill speed limit change. But after that, which I don't anticipate taking too long unless you all want to give a lengthy testimonial about that, we'll go into, we are thinking we're going to have a cordial discussion on parking in the village here. And a couple of you might be interested in that if you want to stay after the public hearing. But in the meantime,
Do we have to recess our select board meeting to have the public hearing?
yes,
Well, we
yeah,
have an executive session.
then we'll have an executive session. So we've got a little bit of time. We could recess and turn off the cameras for a few minutes, give us time to have a beer before we start the public hearing, and then resume. Can I have a motion to recess?
I would move,
Second?
seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'll call this, let's see, do I need a motion to come out of recess? Reconvene? I'll ask for one.
I'd like to move that we reconvene our select board meeting.
All right.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, we're back in business. Cameras rolling. We are going to have a public hearing now on a proposed speed limit change on Wickopee Hill. And I am going to turn this over to Hugh Warden, who's going to do the honors.
Okay. So we'll say we'll open the public hearing at 7 o'clock?
Yes,
Okay.
by my watch.
So a public hearing, I don't think this is going to take long. Probably this explanation is going to take longer than the hearing is. But so for a hearing, that's just what this is. This is a proposed ordinance for a speed limit change. So this is an opportunity for anyone who has an interest in that hearing or that ordinance to provide your thoughts onto that thing. Generally, when you speak to the board up here, and then they shouldn't turn into discussions. I don't think we're going to get there, but just if you haven't been to a hearing before. So they're a little more, and potentially a little more formal than anything else because it's part of the legislative function of the select board. So what I'll do is I'm going to start out, I'll read the warning that went out, and then that'll have the ordinance in it, then we'll open the hearing up for discussion, and then after that what I'll do is I'll just explain the process of how an ordinance becomes effective in the town. And any questions at that point we'll start taking them. So right from the source, the actual newspaper, if anybody gets it, The town of Dummerston, by and through its select board and pursuant to 23 VSA section 1007 Alpha 1 Bravo, hereby gives notice that the select board proposes to change the speed limit on the following road from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour within the Article 4, Section 2 of the town's traffic ordinance. And that new ordinance would be K under that article. Town Highway 48, which is Wickopee Hill Road, from the intersection of Bear Hill Road south to the town line. The public hearing on this issue will be held at the scheduled select board meeting on October 26, 2016 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held at the Dummerston Community Center. So in our town ordinance, that is the town's speed ordinance, where it lists the different roads under Article 4 for speed restrictions in West Dummerston. This ordinance will be added as item K in the Town Highway 48 Wickopee Hill Road from the intersection of Bear Hill Road south to the town line. Will fall under that 25 mile per hour speed limit. At this time, we'll take any questions. There being no questions, so we've warned it. The hearing will go on. After we close the hearing, the select board will go back into the regular meeting, and then we'll either choose to accept the ordinance or we'll choose not to accept the ordinance. If it's accepted, we're going to need to post this in 5 places throughout the town. It'll also be published within a newspaper within 14 days of the action on it if it is passed. And then the ordinance, so the speed limit on Wickopee Hill will become effective within 60 days unless, and this is for any ordinance that gets passed, a petition to disapprove the ordinance is delivered to the town within 44 days that is signed by 5% of the voters within the town. If that's done, what we'll have to do is go through a special town meeting, and then the town will have an opportunity to vote on the ordinance as a whole. Does anybody have any questions about the speed ordinance?
Okay.
I guess we can close the hearing at 7:05.
Okay. So now we'll resume our regular select board program, and next on our agenda is...
We need to vote on that though, right?
Yes.
Isn't that what you, oh, okay, sorry.
The discussion and/or action on the Wickopee Hill speed limit change. I'll take a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept the ordinance as it was warned.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. There. Okay. Now, well, is anyone interested in discussing parking in the West Village? Sort of our, we had some people come before our last, or one of our last select board meetings, and holding a meeting here, giving people a chance to discuss this issue was thought to be a good idea. The way our rules of procedure are, if you'd like to speak, you need to be recognized by me, and then you'll be able to stand up or state your name and then what you'd like to say, and we'll go back and forth for a little while and see what comes out. So is there anyone who would like to speak about?
Well, I'll speak.
All right.
Jean Lomini. I would like to say that the Community Center has been in control of the parking area here, which works out well for us with the library functions that go on here. We do not want any outside parking here, only what is for the Community Center and the ball field. So, does that help?
I could hear you, yes. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say? Well, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. I guess no one has anything else to say. Oh, yes?
Joanne Tier, 155 West Street. My concern about the parking in the village is, and I had to write this down so I don't get nervous,
Sure.
the ability for rescue to answer a call in the village, the ability for the fire department to answer a call in the village, the protection of the children in the village who are going to the community center, children who are riding their bikes, and children who are walking down West Street. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I'll, that motion to adjourn.
Well, hold on.
Here, I don't have to stand up. I got a question to ask, and I don't know how it is to be presented, but property has been given a permit and with restrictions on parking. And the restrictions on the parking are not being followed. What enforcement can be done about that, because this situation causes a hindrance to the traffic flow? In other words, they were supposed to be parking their vehicles in other places, and they're not doing such. They're parking multiple vehicles in the wrong places. I'd like to know what the enforcement is going to be done about it.
Okay. I note that right now, the town has an ordinance that really only deals with snow. The state ordinance, what can you?
Yeah, state under 23 VSA 1102, any law enforcement officer is authorized to remove any unattended vehicles which is an obstruction to traffic or the maintenance of the highway, and remove it to the garage or other place of safety. Now, that really doesn't address exactly what you're saying, but that is our only option if this perceives to be a continued problem. That's our only option is, and state statute allows us to have the cars towed.
Well, my point that I was bringing up is the town has granted someone
Right.
permission.
Harold, can I address that? And
Yes.
Hugh may, with his DRB experience, may be able to help me out. But I think if someone has a conditional use permit or to have an apartment or business or something, and that conditional use permit specifies number of parking spaces, and if the business or individual is in violation of that, then it would be, I believe, and Sam Farwell might help, zoning violation or violation of the DRB permit, and be addressed by the zoning administrator. Is that right?
Well, the enforcement, the permitting itself it identifies the parking available. So if there's parking not available, other than something that's been grandfathered, which everything in the village is like pre-zoning. So, but anything that that's going to be newly permitted has to adhere to certain parking regulations. I don't exactly remember what those are, but they're sufficient to make sure there's parking available for the number of bedrooms or
Apartments.
apartments. I mean, I guess you can't really say it's a 3-bedroom house, so you can only have one car, but you have to have off-road parking, and it specifically addresses, the size and function of that. And if it's not available, then you will not be permitted. So once you have a permit, then you need to adhere to the conditions of your permit, or then it becomes a zoning enforcement action, which is essentially a letter from the zoning administrator, and then if that happens, then it becomes, it would eventually come back to the select board
The zoning administrator there are fines.
right, the fines,
Assessed.
once you're notified, the fines begin. That is correct, yes. Yep. I don't know, does that answer your question?
I wanted to know where to go. I mean, it doesn't seem to do any good. I mean, the party has been informed of the situation and they're not abiding by the rules, and who is going to enforce it?
I think zoning violations are complaint driven, so I think you've made a complaint.
To Sam Farwell, and following up on this with, as planning commission chair, obviously that complaint's gotta get a little more specific, and it needs to go to the zoning administrator so that she can get the information and then send that letter. I don't think, I'm afraid that what you said sounded like you were gonna take it from here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that it was clear that these complaints need to be taken to the zoning administrator and with an address.
Yes.
She can't figure it out just by oblique comments.
So, John Gregory,
Yes.
I was at the last select board meeting, so I think what I'd like to do is maybe, in the spirit of that conversation that both Paul Chapman and I had, maybe just start the meeting off with the concerns so that maybe it might spawn some more discussion. So I think the concern there in that meeting that was addressed that caused us to have this gathering was a couple things. One is Paul mentioned that as residents of West Street, we'd like to have an actionable plan for being able to address parking situations, where parking on your lawn, maybe parking where we know that zoning has dictated you shouldn't park, and being able to follow a process to be able to address that. Now, in order to do that, I think the residents of the town really need to understand what the rules are. And I think you just mentioned what we have, and we have very ambiguous, kind of nothing really defined. And I think we're asking to define that, figuring out how we can define that to the degree that the town is comfortable with or the residents are comfortable with. And then how do you enforce that? And my personal opinion is parking is a symptom of a bigger problem, right? Parking is a symptom of there's a process in which you allow people to build houses, add apartments, add bed and breakfasts, add Airbnbs, which no matter what you do are going to affect the number of people and the number of cars that are in town. And I think from my perspective, it starts there. That's the root cause, right? That's the root cause, because if you don't do that well, you don't define that and you don't enforce it, what you have is too many cars for a street that can't handle any cars now as it is. And so I know for my concern is, I don't want that to be a problem in 10 years. I don't want it to be worse. I don't want it to be more cars on the street. I'm living here because I have a family. I like the rural area. I like being able to walk up and down the street. And I would like to ask the town to look at options for where we can do a better job of maybe putting criteria in place so that we're not creating a whole town of rental apartments or bed and breakfasts, right? Because that's not why I'm living here. I'm living here for the community, for residents. And I think that was the spirit of the discussion we had at the last meeting. And I know there's different views and different opinions here, but certainly those are some of mine that I wanted to express to the select board. And hopefully we can have a more open discussion about that with other individuals.
Well, you saw how we had changed an ordinance to change a speed limit. Do you want to have an ordinance that would prohibit overnight parking?
I would have to understand how that overnight parking would actually address the concern of the residents.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something to put on the table, something to discuss. I'm not sure that it addresses, from my perspective, we're creating a situation where we've got way too many potential cars in an area that can't support it, right? Understand that. This is a residential area, it's not a business area. And the more rental properties you approve, the more Airbnbs you approve, increases the opportunity to have more parking when there's not enough parking for the residents to begin with. So where do they park? On the street, on the properties, wherever they can find. And I'm not blaming the folks that are getting approved to have that happen. I'm looking in the town to address that because I think it's a bigger problem, right? You know this area. How many discussions has the board have about septic, setbacks, all those things for this area? It's been treated uniquely. Why? Because nobody has any property. There's no frontage. So it's a challenge just for the residents. And when you add rentals or you add businesses to that area, it makes it more challenging. And I think it frustrates some of the residents here that you just have so many cars, there's only so many places to put them, right? And from my perspective, not knowing anything different or being told anything different, The road is not a parking spot, right? My lawn is not a parking spot, even though there's a setback and the town may own part of my property or part of the frontage. That doesn't mean you can park on the lawn and that's acceptable, right? So in that spirit, I think that we need to talk about that, and is there a compromise here, a way to regulate that such that it doesn't get worse, right? In 10 years, we have 20 more cars in this town that we're trying to figure out how to park. Because it creates risk, not, as Joanne said, to children, to rescue and fire, to, you know, why are we living in Vermont? It's a beautiful place. There's trees, there's grass, it's nice. I've lived here my whole life. Do I want to see a row of cars all the way down West Street? No. That's not why I'm living here. Do I want to feel like I'm in Brattleboro? No. I'm in here because this is a very nice neighborhood. It's a nice place to live, and I like to look out my window, and it's beautiful. So, you know, in that context, I want to save that, right? You know, and we're all fighting against it because the world's getting smaller and there's more people in this world. But I think we owe it to our community to figure out how to address that. And that's certainly, from my perspective, my biggest concern with regards to parking.
I think the one thing, go ahead, Natalie, then I'll go ahead.
Natalie Blake. So I just want to address that I think that the Airbnb that's being spoken about are my properties, and the apartment that is being spoken about was the one that my mom tried to get, and she's been denied, so that's a non-issue now. There was one mistake that I made a long time ago. I spoke to both Joanne and Ron and John, and I thought that it was, this was my mistake, that it was okay to park now and again if there was an overflow across the street. I checked out with Rick to make sure that the fire trucks could get through, and Lee, the town foreman, and thought that was all checked out. Come to know that that was not the right thing to do. I've taken that off any place in my listings, and I have apologized to both. I haven't seen Joanne and Ron, and I didn't know that that was an issue there. We've had discussions in the town about this sense of lots of cars, and so what I have promised to do, and certainly will, I have no desire to make any of my neighbors uncomfortable or deny anyone's requests. So all of the cars that go along with my Airbnbs will be parked completely off the road, completely off the pavement, and there is now the first thing that any of my guests see is not only do you need to treat the village with care and kindness and gratitude, but also you must get your vehicles neatly off the road. Absolutely no part of the car can hang on pavement. So I've made all those changes and made them very clear. I think that it's possible that Nick and I have had many guests of our own friends that have nothing to do with Airbnb. About a month ago, for instance, we had quite a number of friends come for the weekend, and that none of them were paying guests. It was not Airbnb, we were there, and there was a lot of cars right when that happened. It was made known to us that people were feeling a little upset about the car situation. The weekend was upon us, so we pulled all the cars off as best we could, off the road. I think there was one boat trailer that we didn't do a very good job, and that hung out 6 inches, and that, so anyway, try better. And what I've told the neighbors that I have spoken to who are concerned about this is that in future, when we have those guests come, we will park them down at my commercial property down on West Street, the Fulcrum Arts building, and we will shuttle people up so that there will never be that amount of cars sort of unsightly, even if they are parked off the pavement, that we will make an effort to make it neat and tidy. And as far as the Airbnb is concerned, for me, we only have a certain amount of bedrooms, so we don't allow extra cars, and that's a rule on our part. So we will never add to that. I know there might be other people in the village. I don't know I don't think I know anyone who's thinking about Airbnb, but anyway, I just want to address that I have gone specifically to all neighbors and talked to them, heard what they had to say, and I'm very willing and happy to abide by people's requests and make it neat and tidy, and I will not be on the road at all.
So I just want to respond to that. I do appreciate that Natalie actually spoke to Nick today for like an hour and a half, and I certainly believe that you're willing to work with us and that we can work it out. No doubt whatsoever. And so my concern really is not with you or Nick or your Airbnbs. My concern is someone buys your property tomorrow Someone buys a house down the street tomorrow. They decide to put in rental property, Airbnb. They decide not to behave. They decide, now I as a resident have to go through that whole process again to get to know you, complain, talk to the town, because we don't have anything that's governing us as far as that's concerned, right? And so that's kind of, I don't want to be on an individual or a group of people here. I really think it's more of a street-related issue that I would like to discuss.
Sam Farwell, can you respond?
Yeah, Sam Farwell, and I want to,
Planning Commission.
that's right up, that's what I want to talk about, because a couple of different things. I mean, I think it would be good to clarify at this meeting, what the property owner has a right to claim as his property up to the edge of the road, and what the town right-of-way means for the property owner as far as a car parking there. My understanding is that the town has a right-of-way so many feet wide from the center of the road to either side, but the property owner owns right up to the middle of the road. If it's a different property on the other side, that the property line is right in the middle of the road. And so it's your land, and I think that if a car was on your land off the traveled way, even with the town right-of-way there, I think you have the right to say that this car is trespassing. So at that point, you can call the state police, you can call Lee Chamberlain, you can make noise, or you can put a note on that person's car. But you have that right. And I'd like to, if somebody else wants to address that, please do. But as a property owner in the village, I certainly would be very, very alarmed if we were going to have the town strengthen a parking ordinance in the village more than what we have, because it's going to apply to everybody, not just businesses. And I like to have people over too. And I don't have a lot of extra space. I don't have a big backyard. So occasionally I'm going to want to let people park on the side of the road on my property, but slightly on the pavement. So if it's snowing, obviously, then I'm in violation of the ordinance, but otherwise I'm okay. And because I want that, I want everyone else to have it. So that's a red flag for me. When we talk about, we know we have good neighbors now, but in the future we might have bad ones. Well, that's life. We really can't legislate against that. We do, however, have zoning bylaw that regulates parking in any new development that is not residential. So a rental or a business has to abide by the site plan, which specifies where the parking is. So once that person's in violation, and it is complaint driven, we can't rely on our zoning administrator to drive around and take pictures. But the fines are actually, I believe it's $100 a day from the point at which you are in violation and continue to violate. So we have that written in. Now, where's the teeth? I don't know. But eventually it becomes that the town can put a lien on the property. So I'm satisfied with that commercial development will be regulated so that we have enough off-street parking. Personally, I walk to school every morning down the street, the full length of the village, well, half the length of the village, with my 2 children. I've done it for years. And I'm concerned about somebody who hasn't quite finished his cup of coffee and is flying through the village to get to work. But that's a speeding issue. Parking has not caused me to worry for my children's safety. Occasionally there's a car parked on the pavement, and if necessary, we'll go on the property side rather than the traveled way side. But generally speaking, it's a sleepy village, and you can hear the car coming. So I don't share the concern for safety impacted by parking that I've heard. And I certainly would like to keep keep the ability to park on the street.
Carla Hicken. I am a street parker because I don't really have anywhere else to park. So my concern is, am I considered like grandfathered in, or are you gonna tow my car because I don't have anywhere to park? We do have a driveway, but in the winter, because the way the town has paved the road, there's about this much of the pavement, so the incline is like this, so there's no way for a vehicle to get out of there in the winter, especially at 6 in the morning when the car's plowed in and I can't get to work. I agree with Sam in regards to guests. We like to have people over. We have no parking. So does that mean we can't do that? Some of our guests live out of town and they stay over. They don't stay all the next day, but they leave the next morning. So that's my concern is we've been in that house since 1974 and I don't want this street band parking to affect a resident that's been there for years and years and years with no parking. We don't have anywhere to go. So the policy is what I would like to hear, what the resolution will be for folks like us that don't have anywhere to park, especially in the winter time.
Paul Chapman. I'd like to know, and I understand both of your concerns on parking there. What about the ones of us who have been affected by the apartment house on the north side of the village, where they park 4 and 5 vehicles in the road?
Mm-hmm.
For 2 years, we dealt with that with 17 people in the Clark apartment house.
Mm-hmm.
Town could do nothing. How does that leave us in limbo land with dealing with that? I mean,
Well,
finally, a failed
I
septic is what, ended the situation.
Right.
But they were allowed to park in the road completely.
Mm-hmm.
Lee had to plow around them. When they wanted to leave, they would leave. They wouldn't, shovel out. How do we deal with that separate part of it?
Mm-hmm.
And also, Sam here, I'm gonna put the complaint in on the Grange Hall. All right, officially do it. It's 1 parking spot parked parallel because of the well. Everybody here seems to dance around the issue on that one, so I'll do it. You want it in writing?
Yes, to the zoning and municipal.
Will do. It's going in tomorrow morning. All right?
What is it that
We're going
they're
along
parking,
here.
they're only allowed 1 spot and they're
Yep.
using 2?
It's right in the DRB rule, and it's been the second ruling, I guess, this has been in. All right?
Okay.
We did dance around this issue for too long now, and then after listening to, what you just said there, it's time to put the complaint in, and I'm doing
Yeah,
it.
that would make sense. Yeah.
My name is Guru Dharam Khalsa. I live at 25 Lyons Street and I have lived there for 12 years now and raised my son there. So I live between the former Grange and the former church, which is now the Airbnb. And so I travel up Lyons Road, up and down Lyons Road, 3 or 4 times a day. So I'm very familiar with the parking and the traffic in the center of town specifically. First, I think we're conflating 2 issues. The issue you're speaking about is on private property.
Correct.
And frankly, doesn't concern me. I have never been impacted either way by the parking situation there. Whatever, if I'm coming up from below from Line Street, I always have to creep up to see what's going on in West Street. And if there's a car there, I just creep up a few more feet before I proceed. And I've never seen a close call or an accident there. So that situation there on private property simply doesn't concern me. The concern of parking in the roadway around the travel section, in the last month I have made my own observations. I've been out there every day and actually have recorded 54 observations of occurrences of where this actually is. And I don't think you need to drill down to those weeds unless you want me to provide you with that information. But my general feeling is, as a driver and a resident in the village, I'm not inconvenienced by the cars that are slightly parked on the road. There are cars that are regularly parked, say, maybe 7/8 off the road, and maybe a tire length or width on the road. And to me, that doesn't affect my sight lines or my driving ability to pass down West Street. For me, the parking has never been a problem. I'm not inconvenienced by it. And I personally don't see the need for further unnecessary government regulation on West Street.
I think he's trying to get to me with that.
Let's see if someone else has it. Yes.
Carrie Toll. I'll just say that I absolutely appreciate everything you said, and I want everyone who lives here to be able to use their homes and have friends over and get to work. And I have no solution. I'm not suggesting. I don't have a thing in mind. But I've been here for 15 years, and if you ask me what the biggest challenge of living in the village is, I would say it's the concern over parking. And I do think it needs to be addressed. And I don't know what or how that will look or should look, but I do think that we need some structures to address not just new people coming in and businesses or whatever, but also for those of us who live here, that there's something agreed on that's functional and that works, and I hate to say it, but is also enforceable, because it has been historically over 15 years, and you know, some of the worst of it was way before you even came into the village, you know, when the Grange was owned previously and they had these massive events, but there was no recourse except to call the sheriff, and you could only do that and you had to wait till 10 o'clock. So I feel like over 15 years, it has been a consistent problem, and that the town should figure out something that's logical and respectful and workable and enforceable, that protects those people who live here now and their use, but also in the future, as I plan to be here for a long time, decades to come, I hope, so that we have some recourse when things are frustrating.
Huh, I wonder what that could be.
Okay. Anyone who has not spoken, would you like a chance to speak before we hear?
Let me just throw something out then while it's quiet for a minute. So, I live in the village as well, so, you know, I see this, the parking, the way it kind of unfolds to it. I mean, I came home last night at 6:30 and we were down to a single lane road down here. So it does concern me, but there's two things that really give me is, as we make this discussion, it's got to be equitable to everybody. You know, we're kind of like, we spend a lot of time talking about one section of parking but it's, whatever this is going to be, it's got to be for everybody. You know, we're not going to single somebody out and say, well, you can't do this because you have a permit or business, whatever. We've got whatever solution that we want to come up with as a community, it's got to be equitable for everybody. The other thing is, you know, I live in the village, and though I think my biggest football fan is at college now, so he's not having friends over. But when I want to have people come over to my house, you know, I want people to, you know, I have parking. You know, I'm fortunate, but not always enough. So, you know, I would not be in favor of seeing, you know, an absolute ban on parking. You know, I mean, you've got to have some flexibility to have people come over to your house. The other thing is, we got to be, as we talk through this, we can't contradict ourselves, because we've already talked about the statute. So really, if the state says you can't park on the travel portion of the road, you know, we can't come in with an ordinance that contradicts that. You know, everything we do, or we've got to adhere to, in other words, we can't go against the state law. So I mean, we can't make an ordinance. The state doesn't give us permission to make an ordinance that contradicts whatever the state law is about being parked on the roadway. So, like Carrie, I don't have a solution at the moment, but every one of these things that we're talking about is going to open up some level of, you know, whatever you want to call it, a can of worms or something else. So, I really applaud the fact that we're having a very civil dialogue on how it's going. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know it's got to be equitable, and it can't contradict the state law as you think about how you want to see this thing taken care of.
So Hugh, just to respond to your initial discussion about, or the initial statement about business versus residential, I think certainly we can differentiate between business and residential. I mean, that's done across all aspects of when you have a business versus residential, there's different rules apply. They always apply. So I think we ought to keep that open, just because I sympathize with the folks on the street that have homes and don't have adequate parking. I do not sympathize with somebody that's decided to have a business to make money and doesn't have an adequate parking, because from my perspective, that should never happen to begin with. The town should have never allowed that business to happen. Therefore, should have not have, if they don't have adequate parking off-street, should have never happened. At least that's my opinion. So I want to keep that open, because I see them as two different topics.
I guess at the risk of going beyond my DRB knowledge base, I don't think any of those were actually approved. They're not businesses. I mean, the permits that were issued are for single-family residences. The business, and maybe Sam, you can help me out here if you remember the bylaws. That's going to be a whole separate issue. Okay, there's nothing in the village. There's no conditional use or specified use that says that there can be any type of business that's actually being done in the village right now. So all the permits are for single-family residences or rental apartment in the village. So we have no businesses. So I hear what you're saying, but that's another issue, because that
sounds like there's an opportunity to look at that, because that sounds like a gaping hole to me.
Oh, throughout the state.
Yeah, and maybe it is, but
it's not a Dummerston thing.
Right.
It's a state thing. This is all new entities. So I am going to go back and what I said. Everybody's got to be the same. We don't have businesses as such in the village.
Well,
permitted as such.
Yeah. And wasn't there, I mean, I think there was a business permit for I can't remember the property owner or the nature of the business is like a consultant, having one car at a time or something like that, a small house on.
Yes, behind me. Actually, you're right, because I got noticed
And
that she would meet with one client at a time or something.
Right.
It is in the village, which
It's not on West Street.
That's not on West Street.
Right. But there always is, I mean, they are treated differently. I mean, there always is a site plan requirement showing off-street parking, and the DRB has the authority to grant the permit with a specified number of parking spaces or a number of cars at a time. So they are treated differently. I mean, single-family residence, when it's permitted, is not permitted with a limit on the number of cars that can be parked in its yard. It's generally, there are rules about the driveway, but there's no, single-family homes don't come with any limits on parking. I'd like to bring up the history of the bad neighbor that I moved in after.
We don't have any bad neighbors.
No, the one who had 17 cars in the road that you talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
They just don't live here anymore.
Right, that's the history.
And it was an absentee landlord.
But I'd like to revisit that, because, okay, so, I mean, that looms in the past, and that might come again, right? So
I'm doing everything I can to prevent that.
absolutely. But you can't, right? You can't stop somebody who's determined to be a bad neighbor from buying a house. So what if he does and parks 17 cars in the road? What can we do? You said that the town did nothing, which surprises me, because it's state law that it's illegal to do that. So why not call the state police every night? I mean, wouldn't we do that?
Zeke, you were involved.
Or we could do it. I mean, we just call the state police directly.
Zeke, would you like to answer?
I wasn't on the board until it got to be a septic issue. And, so I wasn't there for the history that happened before. It was just a failed septic system.
We consistently got told there was nothing we could do because all we have is road maintenance and snow removal.
Right.
That's what we consistently got told.
We've complained.
Yes,
We had the
repeatedly.
state police there a lot.
You
They
did.
moved the drug activity from in front of our bedroom down to the store. But it took 2 more years to get him out of there because of the failed septic. There was nothing. And right now, it could come at any time again.
Yeah.
The person that owns it is never here. So next summer, I could do another 2 years, 2 summers of it. So, you know, if we don't have anything in place, even an overnight parking, or we could all get stuck with it like this. We've got enough rentals in this village where it could happen to any one of us and we'll be in the same boat. So I would think that we'd at least look for an overnight parking, so there's something. You know, we can still all be neighborly, and we know that you've got limited parking and stuff, but what about the ones that had to live 2 summers with something like this and nowhere to go?
But who are you gonna call to enforce
Well-
overnight parking ban?
You'd call the sheriff's department and the state police, and they'd tow them. Maybe if we could have towed these people a few times, we could have gotten them out quicker.
They should, I mean, it's a state law that they can't park in.
They didn't.
Block the roadway.
The same
so-
thing as with this Airbnb situation. People have made complaints or talked to the zoning commission, what's going on here on this? People have talked to planning commission members.
Yeah.
3 years later, nothing's gone on until somebody put their name on a piece of paper and we're having this meeting. And I know it's something different, but the process was started. All right, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because I'm definitely not interested in living through another 2 years with a
Crack house.
in front of my house. And then to be told by our old town, there's nothing we can do. Why they told us that, I don't know.
Well, because it was true, I mean, the only law against parking on the road was a state law, so that would be a state police issue.
Right,
The only
but
thing they would do is.
without a ordinance in town, state police told us they would not tow. So that's why we're pushing
You're told
hard.
with no ordinance?
With no ordinance in town that allowed them permission to tow for other than snow removal or road maintenance, they were not interested in doing anything.
So what I've kind of taken out at this point, one of the issues was the parking right at the top of the community center here, which has been addressed. It seems like you've made your commitment, right, Natalie? We talked and no parking will be there. So really it's a matter now of identifying, honestly, where's the other parking issues, and that's got to
I
be
would just
corrected.
say, I don't think this is about Natalie. I think this is about what happens in the future. And that I appreciate that these specific issues have been addressed for this community on this day.
Yeah.
But what happens in 10 years or 5 years or next year or 6 months from now, that we can't have a group meeting every time there's a parking crisis. There should be something established and set that we can point to and that's enforceable.
Right, so we talked about one issue that's been identified that's, at this point, is corrected. It's not gonna happen. We know you can't park on the street. It's a state law. We've got that. Now, we have to identify the other parking issues, and then what are we gonna do? Are we gonna say everything's gonna be off-street parking? Or do we identify, is there adequate parking that they have available and they're not utilizing? Or, you know, we've talked about one, we know we can't park on the street. That seems to be corrected. Now, where's the other ones? I mean, I know you're saying it's not about one person or one house. We've talked about that a lot, but there's other parking that goes on the street. And do we want to enforce the state laws? I mean, is that,
Can you do that again?
do we get that?
First off, let me explain. I didn't write this law. Right? and I will tell you folks, we've worked on this a long time. I mean, this goes back to early September when the select board asked me to start looking into what we can do about parking. And so then I reached out to the League of City and Towns, which is a resource that select boards can use to get information. After I had looked through some of the state statutes, and these are what they wrote back to me. And we also, just to back up a little bit, we do have a winter parking ordinance. And and like I said, we've talked about this for over 2 months at select board meetings, and at the last meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, Lee Chamberlain, the road foreman, was in, and he really addressed, I mean, I know you're talking about summer, but he really addressed what an issue it is in the winter for snow plowing. Because he has to serpentine sometimes through the town, and he also, if it's heavy wet snow, you know, they're always concerned with rolling snow against somebody's car and denting the side of the car. And then when the cars move, they have to come back, which is a cost to the rest of the taxpayers in town because they're plowing it an extra time or an extra day. So that was some of our discussion that we had. And then, you know, I looked into the state statute, and then I contacted the league. And basically what the league has said, without a full-time ordinance or a full parking, municipal parking ordinance, we have to rely on a self-executing provisions of state law. And under state law, it said that we can, Section 2, remove an unattended vehicle which is an obstruction to traffic or to the maintenance of the road, and remove it to a safe place. There's other things that within the statute, but basically that's the one they're saying that we theoretically could have a car towed anytime we want. Now, I don't think anybody wants that, but this is the only thing that we've found that we could back up to if we can't come to some type of resolution with the people in the community.
And our winter ordinance is actually specific to where plows turn around. It doesn't actually address the roadways. So
yeah,
it's really, it's only on places where you can see, like up at the end of Wickopee Hill, the place where plows turn around. So the winter ordinance is not designed.
It doesn't help us much. But
That's where I turn around.
Just don't park there in the winter.
No, I'll plug in.
But Sam missed a golden opportunity to talk about his town plan, because they are meeting on the town plan next week, Tuesday.
Yep.
And the town plan is kind of the umbrella that we write our zoning from, so that might be a good place for some of you to bring your concerns to.
You certainly could. Yeah.
But we don't have much to work from, and we really have to be at the end of our wits to start calling the state police to have vehicles towed. I mean, we're really hoping we can come to some resolution way out of that.
Alex Wilson, I live up on Leonard Road. I was on the planning commission for a dozen years, but many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I wanted to talk a little bit about traffic calming. I'm on the Route 30 corridor committee that's looking at trying to improve safety along Route 30 in Brattleboro. And, you know, I think here in Dummerston, West Dummerston, we need to be careful what we wish for. You know, the studies show that the longer the sight line, the faster people drive. You know, I think if we succeeded in getting all the cars off the street in West Street, we'd see people driving through here at 40 miles an hour. Yeah. And then there really would be a safety issue for our children.
So you don't think there's one now?
Well, I think there probably is, but I think the cars are probably driving, you know, if they're having to weave in and out of parked cars, I think they're probably traveling at a lower rate of speed. So I'm not suggesting a solution here, but I just think as we talk about this, we need to realize that studies show pretty clearly that if drivers have a clear line of sight for where they're going, they drive faster. And you know, that's where, you know, minor accidents can turn into really severe accidents.
So I appreciate that view, but I don't think putting cars in the way of drivers is the right way to deter speeders. Right? I mean, it is a fact, and I think but I think that the speeding issue needs to be addressed on its own. I mean, they come off Leonard Road like they're launching. You know that, you live up there. I mean, they get their speed and zip through town, and that's certainly another issue. I didn't want to bring it up here tonight because I think it's a separate issue, but it does add risk, right? And I would say speeders with big metal objects in their way, you know, that's riskful in itself, especially if there's a kid right behind one of them that comes out and doesn't know. I mean, speeding, I think, is another topic, and it's definitely a concern of mine. Because if you sit down here at 7:30 or 7 o'clock, you see them bombing by, you know, for an hour, and that's been a concern of mine for 10 years.
Yeah, they sure come by our house.
Right,
fast.
and we could spend another hour talking about that, I'm sure.
We're going to.
Right.
Yes.
If I may speak one more time, Guru Daram Khalsa. So, I don't think we can pass an ordinance to change the past, nor do I think we can enforce an uncertain future. And in my mind, the recent action of the DRB board to deny an apartment permit based in part on a parking restriction is in fact a means of enforcement for the number of new people who may move into the village in converted apartments. Now, by my count, there's some 32 residences, and informally I counted 9 apartments. So that gives you an idea of the present ratio, and I don't see any signs that that's really going to change drastically. So I don't, frankly, after my observation of how open and clear the street is at all times of the day, I don't think we can legislate something from the past or the future. We just have to see the present situation the way it is. And for me, again, I don't see the problem.
Rick, I don't want to put you on the spot, but just from a safety perspective, do you have any concerns with the way things are?
We had one instance where it would be tough to get the fire trucks through.
Couldn't get them through.
But it's been better. But there could be a way to make this easier for people to live with each other. Why not make one side of the street no parking on one side of the village? And then you got one side open, so you don't have people weaving back and forth. I work for the town of Bratt. We have a parking ordinance for the winter time. Certain times of the evening, and they're ticketed or towed. That would give people plenty of time to do their visiting, and if they gotta stay overnight, find a place to get off the street. That's the way it works in Bratt. If you don't, you get towed. It's pretty simple to make an ordinance like that.
So, who lives on that side of the road? And is it okay?
West or east side, right?
Yeah, so.
Maybe it alternates every year.
Like Boston, every other snowstorm, you park on one side of the street, then the next.
Well, it seems like it's the east side that has most of the parking trouble. Most of the people that live on the west side have longer driveways and, you know, so.
No, I don't know. 50-50.
The difference is Brattleboro, there's buildings on both sides with no lawns, right? Here we've got a difference, right? And it's easier to make that kind of rule in Brattleboro this year. Certainly I live on the side and I have a nice lawn, and there's plenty of room. Park them all on my lawn, right? We can make a parking lot if we wanted to. So certainly that's not something I'm, if we made it on the west side of the street, then I'd have cars parking on, on my lawn, right? By default. So I can see the challenges there.
And I live on the east side of the street, so.
So, Jean, you were the first person to speak.
Pardon?
You were the first person to speak.
Yes, I was.
And I wondered if you had any additional thoughts or perspectives, having heard what other people have said relative to parking at the community center.
Definitely no parking here. It's not our problem. Don't make it our problem. We need our parking. And maybe it's an empty parking lot at nighttime, but we like that for security reasons. No parking down here, sorry. That's not our problem. As I said, don't make it our problem, and it would be a problem. It's yours. Is that clear?
Pretty clear. I have a couple of questions. Who owns this property?
The town owns it.
Right.
Does the town want to put parking here?
I just wanted to clarify that, first of all, but
Yes, the town owns it, and if the town wants to put parking here, then the town can take the building over. Would you like that?
It's an option.
You'll back me up.
It's pretty strong, but.
I have a question for Sam also. If somebody has a single-family residence and decides to rent it, is there a permit required for that?
No, to rent out your home, somehow that falls under residential use. I'm not sure that our bylaw addresses that specifically, but the state rulings on rooms and meals taxes and things like that, when you're an inn versus renting your home, you know, if you rent out your home for more than 30 days to the same tenant, then you're not a bed and breakfast or an inn, and so that's the state definition. But I believe that the homeowner has the right to do that without any regulation.
If you make part of your house an apartment, then you would need a permit. If you were going to keep living there, but then add another portion of your house as an apartment.
Right. Well, the zoning bylaw kicks in whenever there's any development, whenever there's any construction or land development, right? So that would be, yeah, if you...
Yes, no, just has to be yes and no. Yes, that would be a development.
If you make changes to your house... Well, let me make this very clear. If you're going to do any construction to your building, you need to go get a permit.
Okay.
But if you've already got a room and you rent out that room, then you're not developing anything. Okay, so that's where some of this Airbnb stuff ends up flying under the radar. And since if I could just finish talking about the planning commission, and you mentioned at one point that you wrote the letter and it came to the planning commission, and I wanted to reassure you that yes, it did, and we fully intend to take action on it. Airbnb is not.
So it is true that they're going to have to go through a change of use?
It's true that they're going to have to apply for a permit. However, right at the moment, the zoning bylaw hasn't anticipated Airbnb, so there's not a permit that they can apply for.
We have bed and breakfasts, we have things that it
We have a
doesn't
bed and
fit.
breakfast, and we have a country inn, and in certain cases,
the tourist home.
And we have, interestingly, we have the definition of a tourist home in our bylaw, but it's not listed as a use in any district.
So then it
So-
can't
It's not
be used
permitted.
and then it's not permitted.
Correct.
And
So, as far as the planning commission is concerned, when that letter came to our attention with the zoning administrator's report, which included all the other properties in town that had
The one is
Airbnb
permitted, I
listings,
believe now.
was that we didn't want to shut down any business activity like that in Dummerston unnecessarily. We just needed to make the proper changes to the bylaw so that they could get permits, at which point, the parking would be an issue with the site plan approval. Now, we think that it can be approved right at the moment under unspecified use.
Maybe the select board
if necessary.
could meet with the planning commission, the DRB, talk about this more. Have any thoughts on that?
That the select board would talk with the zoning board and the planning commission, and we
With
sort
the
of
planning commission and the
pass this
DRB, yeah. Got any thoughts?
I mean, I think that's great, maybe a thing that could be done, but I think the solution has to come from the community.
Okay.
I mean, I think these are the people that need to help us figure out what the solution is.
Right.
I mean, we can get together with the DRB and we can talk about zoning and with the planning commission, but truthfully, I think resolution of this issue has to come from the people here.
I think if,
I mean, we can't come up with...
that comes along, that the parking has to really be an important part of it.
I mean, we can certainly address that with the DRB and with the planning commission as they rewrite the zoning, but I still think these people need to go to those meetings and help us resolve it.
Right. And I'd suggest that you're welcome to stay here, but I think the select board probably could.
Well, I think,
We still have an executive session.
I got a couple things on that. One, I'm not sure if you know, I mean, I live here, so at some point, somebody's not gonna be happy. You know, that's just the way it's gonna be, and that's just how things work out. But I'm not sure if that's really fair to just say that, you know, we have got to now, just come down here and meet and say, well, you know, or invite these people to this room and say, you guys, you know, close the door, come out when you have a solution. I don't think that's, I think we've got to, we have to drive some kind of solution at this point. And, you know, again, someone's not going to be happy, but, you know, they presented to the fact that, you know, there's angst, and I think we have more of a responsibility, I think, to kind of bring this to some type of conclusion, whether it's to start out with, you know, addressing this winter ordinance for all town roads, you know, maybe not just the village. And then, you know, that gives us a little bit of time to maybe, you know, just spring to address it. I don't know, but I'm not sure if I can agree with just saying that, you know, we just make it a, you know.
I'm certainly expecting something from the select board, and if you need my help or help from us to do that, I am certainly willing to volunteer for that. But I do not want to leave this meeting with you saying, residents figured out.
Well, I think
that's what Steve is
I want to
saying.
defend my position, that isn't what I said.
Okay.
If that's what I said, it isn't what I meant. But I meant we need to take your input to make our decision. Rather than us sitting here and drawing a line,
Right.
I'm sorry if I
No,
didn't
you
explain
made
that.
that, you said, he implied that, so I was just following through.
Yeah.
Darn you.
I'd also like to say, I think this is a process, and it's not something where we're gonna come up with a solution that's gonna be workable for everybody. I've certainly learned some things tonight. I think this meeting is something that's different, that hasn't happened in the past. I've been really impressed with the way people have spoken. And I think, to Steve's point, what would be helpful to us is to get some ideas. I mean, some have already come out, but some ideas that we can consider and talk about with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board, because we look at things from different perspectives. So what would be the best avenue for receiving feedback from people? If you as an individual have an idea, or if a group of you meets and some ideas come out of that, what's the best method?
You could talk with select board members or planning commissioners, or you could write a letter, you could call us.
I think if we say that we're gonna address this at a certain time, then people will know by when it would be prudent to have some specific
I think we'll discuss
feedback.
this at our next meeting, but I think we'll also, we have, you know, we're not going to be able to devote the whole portion of the meeting. We're not going to be able to solve this at our next meeting, but we can continue to work on it. And I think we need to draw in the Planning Commission on this, and the DRB, and the zoning administrator. I don't think it's, because I came to this meeting thinking, overnight parking ban is a simple solution. This will solve the problem and we can all go home. But obviously that's not going to work for everyone in the village. So it's, you know, I thought, this could be simple, but it's not. So we could keep on going. We still have some more business to do. Anyone? Yes. What, if you want to make one last closing statement.
Thank you.
A minute less. I'm going to.
Thank you, Hugh, for your
This does not
input.
include Sam
excuse me.
Farwell.
He's already used everything.
Two things. Thank you, Hugh, for your input just a few minutes ago. And I do like your feeling on getting the Planning Commission and the DRB board together with you to discuss it with them.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you. Thank you for having the meeting.
Thank you for coming. Yes.
Can I just ask what it's now we're started talking about it, and I got a little lost on whether the it was parking or the broader.
I think
WSWMD Budget.
When I'm talking about the parking situation, that's what I mean. Everybody else on that?
But it isn't just the parking, it's also, it consists light, because we have small children in this village, and the cars being parked this side of the road, that side of the road, somebody comes flying through, a kid steps out behind. This is what is gonna happen. We've been on borrowed time from this happening.
I heard two things. I heard that the select board and the planning commission and the DRB need to meet together. And I also heard that the select board needs more time to work on it. And I also heard that we want community input. So perhaps the deadline for community input could be the meeting when the planning commission and the DRB and the select board all meet.
We'll warn it, I guess, or we'll announce it. Yeah, we'll try to get the word out to let people know. All right. Okay.
We have some more exciting stuff to go over if you want to stay.
No, it's executive session.
Thank you very much for
coming. We can't make decisions in executive session. Okay, we're out of executive session. We're in our regular meeting.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah.
All right. So we're back in our regular meeting, and anyone want to make a motion, or should I?
Go ahead.
All right. I move that we hire Maria Glaybeck as our temporary select board assistant to serve in that position through the budget season, which is November, well, from now through part of January.
Good, I would second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let the minutes record, say that I abstained.
Okay.
All right.
Reflect I abstained.
Okay. And is there any other business?
No.
Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move
Okay.
that we adjourn this evening's select board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.